The heavy oak door swung shut, the reverberation a cold echo of the security guard's words. "Sorry, ma'am, this party is for close family only." I stood there clutching the small, wrapped gift for my grandson, watching 300 guests stream into the ballroom, a lavish celebration unfolding without me. My daughter-in-law, Joy, emerged from the crowd, her smile a predatory curve, to deliver the final blow. "Oh, sweetie, didn't Damon tell you? We decided to keep it small this year. Just immediate family." As I drove away, leaving Cedric's remote-controlled helicopter on the passenger seat, the pain of abandonment hardened into a resolve I hadn't felt in years. I knew I wouldn't be returning home to grieve. Instead, I was calling my bank because the party wasn't over. It was just about to get very interesting for Joy. You here follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has. I stood there, fingers clutching the gift I had wrapped myself, a small box tied with navy ribbon, the kind Cedric would love. Just a few feet away, the grand doors of the ballroom opened and closed as a stream of perfectly dressed guests flowed in. Laughter echoed, music pulsed faintly from inside. I should have been part of it. Instead, I was blocked, physically, by a security guard standing like a wall between me and my own grandson's birthday party. "I'm sorry, ma'am, this event is for close family only," he said again, like I hadn't heard him the first time. I looked him over, noting the name tag on his chest, Marcus. His tone was firm, professional, and impersonal, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Close family only. The phrase struck something deep in me, sharp and bitter. I was family. I had been in Cedric's life since the moment he took his first breath. For 7 years, I had been his grandmother, his babysitter, his comfort during teething nights, his warm arms when he was scared of the dark. "There must be some mistake," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm Bernice Caldwell, Cedric's grandmother." Marcus looked down at the clipboard in his hands and hesitated for a second. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Caldwell. You're not on the approved list." The instructions were very specific about who could enter. Through the glass doors, I saw the party in full swing. Towering balloon arches in blue and gold. A bounce house shaped like a medieval castle. Round tables with glimmering royal blue cloth, their centers crowded with extravagant floral displays and golden candlesticks. It looked more like a wedding than a child's birthday party. Damon, my son, had clearly spared no expense. I could only imagine how much it cost. "Could you check with my son?" I asked, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "Damon Caldwell. He's the father." "I'll need to get confirmation from Mrs. Caldwell," Marcus said, reaching for his radio. Before he could speak into it, I heard the unmistakable clack of designer heels on marble. And there she was, Joy, standing in the doorway like she owned the world, her figure poised in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Hair curled to perfection, a smile painted across her face with surgical precision. She looked like she belonged on the cover of some parenting magazine. "Oh, Bernice," she said, voice slick with manufactured surprise. "What a surprise. What are you doing here?" What was I doing here? The question stung more than I could admit. I had come with a gift in hand and love in my heart. I had come to celebrate the 7th birthday of the boy who meant the world to me, just like I had done every year since he was born. "I'm here for Cedric's party," I answered, my voice barely louder than a whisper. "I brought him something." Joy's lips curved again, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. If anything, it looked more like a smirk, predatory, polished. "Oh, sweetie," she said, tilting her head. "Didn't Damon tell you? We decided to keep things small this year, just immediate family." I glanced behind her. The ballroom was teeming with people, strangers, neighbors, co-workers, 300 guests at least, but somehow I didn't qualify as immediate enough. "Joy, please," I said, shame tightening my throat. "I just want to wish Cedric a happy birthday. That's all." She didn't budge. "He's just so busy with his friends today," she said, keeping her tone light. "Maybe next time we can do something quieter, something more appropriate." More appropriate. The phrase echoed inside me like a drumbeat. I stood there frozen, holding a gift for a child I wasn't allowed to see. Cedric, the boy I'd cared for while Joy had her spa days. The boy I'd rocked through colicky nights when she couldn't stand the crying. The boy who once called me his favorite person in the whole world. "Where's Damon?" I asked, scanning the crowd. "I need to speak with my son. He's coordinating everything right now," Joy replied smoothly. "You know how events like this are. He's very busy." Through the glass, I spotted him. Cedric, my sweet boy in a miniature three-piece suit, laughing as he darted between the tables, a blur of energy and joy. My chest ached in a way it hadn't in years, not since I lost my husband. That feeling of deep, bottomless loneliness returned with full force. "I'll just leave this for him," I said softly, extending the gift to Marcus. It was a remote-controlled helicopter, something Cedric had been dreaming about for months. I'd saved up since spring to buy it. "That's very kind," Joy said with a cold politeness, but she didn't reach for the gift. "I'll make sure he gets it." It was a dismissal. Clean, cruel, final. In the span of 5 minutes, I had gone from cherished grandmother to unwelcome intruder. A woman who had poured love and time into her grandson, now reduced to a name not even listed on the guest sheet. I turned to leave. My legs felt like they were made of concrete. Behind me, Joy's voice sparkled with practiced charm as she greeted more guests. "Welcome, come in, come in. Cedric will be so happy to see you." The parking lot shimmered under the afternoon sun as I made my way to my car. Other guests passed me in their fancy outfits, buzzing with excitement. Some offered polite nods. Most didn't notice me at all. I opened the door and sat behind the wheel, the gift still cradled in my lap. 7 years old. Cedric was 7 and I was being shut out of his life because his mother decided I wasn't family anymore. The pain was fresh, sharp, but underneath it, something else stirred. A cold, hard clarity that had been growing inside me for months, ever since I'd started noticing Joy's subtle power grabs, her passive-aggressive comments, her way of smiling while she pushed me further and further out. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered over a familiar name in my contact list. Once I made this call, there'd be no undoing it. The line rang twice. "First National Bank, this is Rebecca speaking. How may I help you?" "Rebecca, it's Bernice Caldwell," I said, my voice steady. "I need to talk to you about my daughter-in-law's accounts." 20 minutes later, the party was still going strong. I could see the silhouettes of dancing guests through the windows as I sat alone in my car. But I didn't feel powerless anymore. I started the engine and drove away, the gift still resting beside me. Cedric would get it, eventually, but first his mother would get exactly what she had earned. As the city passed by outside my window, I couldn't stop thinking about how we got here. When had I become the villain in my own family? When had loving my grandson turned into an offense? The answer came to me the moment I pulled into my driveway. It had all started 8 years ago, back when Joy realized I had money, back when she wasn't a polished society wife, but just a receptionist at a dental office, pretty and hopeful, clinging to dreams too big for her shoes. Damon had brought her home beaming, his college boy smile back in full force. I thought she was wonderful then, young, ambitious, with just enough charm to fool anyone who didn't know better. "I just want to give Damon the life he deserves," she told me once over coffee. I believed her. God help me, I believed her. He worked tirelessly, and all she ever said was, "I just want to support him." I had been moved by her drive, by her unwavering dedication to my son. When they married just 6 months later, I felt nothing but joy. At last, Damon had found someone who would care for him as deeply and wholly as his father and I once had. The first ask came during their honeymoon. They were in Bali when Joy phoned me in tears. Their rental car had broken down, and they needed money for repairs. $500, not a fortune, but enough to smooth over the bump in their trip. Her voice cracked through sobs. "I'm so embarrassed to even ask. We spent everything on the wedding. We just want this time together to be perfect." Without a second thought, I wired the money. What kind of mother wouldn't want her son to enjoy a perfect honeymoon? But that was only the beginning. Next came the security deposit for their first apartment. Then it was furniture, basic necessities for their new life. After that, Joy's student loans, which she claimed kept her up at night, gnawed at her peace. "It's hurting my health," she told me once, placing a hand dramatically over her chest. The doctor said stress like this can lead to fertility issues. We want to give you grandchildren so badly. That line hit home. The idea of grandchildren. It dangled before me like a golden promise, irresistible to a woman who had been alone too long. And so I paid off her student loans, $23,000, just like that. When little Cedric was born, I thought surely that would be the end of the pleas. We had the baby. The purpose had been fulfilled. But no, pregnancy had been expensive, Joy explained. Even with insurance, the medical bills were crushing. I hate to bring this up, she said softly, bouncing Cedric on her hip. But we're drowning. The last thing we want is for money stress to affect our son's environment. $12,000 more for Cedric's well-being, of course. It happened so gradually, so methodically, that I didn't notice at first. There was always a new reason, always a fresh crisis threatening the peace and stability of my son's family. And I was always the solution. Daycare costs too high? Just a temporary situation, Joy promised, until she found better work. 2 years passed, and I was still shelling out $800 a month. Their apartment too cramped for a growing child? The mortgage company required a co-signer with stronger credit. Could I help them get a house with a yard for Cedric to play in? Of course I could. For Cedric, I co-signed on a house that was far beyond anything I'd ever imagined affording myself. When the mortgage payments became a burden, I helped. When they needed new furniture for the bigger space, I chipped in. Roof repairs, covered. Car problems, taken care of. When Joy's mother fell ill and needed expensive treatment, I was there. But it wasn't just the money. It was the way Joy asked for it, always with those tears, those desperate calls, always making me feel like I was the only one who could pull them back from the edge. "You're such a blessing," she'd whisper over the phone, voice heavy with emotion. "I don't know what we'd do without you. Cedric is so lucky to have a grandmother like you." And I believed it. After so many years feeling invisible in retirement, after the loneliness that followed my husband's death, I felt alive again. I had purpose. I was building a better future for my grandson. I mattered. But eventually the thank yous started to ring hollow. The emergencies kept coming, more frequent, more costly, and Joy's tone began to change. It started with small jabs. "You spoil him too much," she said once when I brought Cedric a new toy. "We're trying to teach him about earning things." Then came the condescending corrections whenever I offered parenting advice. "Things are different now," she'd say with a smug little smile. "We know so much more about child development these days." Gradually, my time with Cedric was cut down. "We just want to establish better routines," Joy claimed. "It's not personal." But it felt personal, especially when I'd scroll through social media and see Joy out with friends while Cedric was at daycare. Daycare I was still paying for. Then 6 months ago, I started noticing something I couldn't ignore. Joy's spending had ballooned. Suddenly she had designer purses, high-end clothes, weekly salon visits. She joined an elite gym, took up art classes, even bought a luxury vehicle. "Damon's doing so well now," she told me when I commented on the shift. "We can finally afford to enjoy some nice things." But I knew Damon's salary. I had helped him negotiate his last raise. The numbers didn't make sense. I started poking around, carefully, quietly. I didn't want to raise suspicions, didn't want to accuse. But what I found chilled me. The money I'd been sending for Cedric's needs, for daycare, for clothes, for classes, it wasn't going where she said it was. She'd been funneling it into a separate account, using it to bankroll her new lifestyle. I saw the receipts stuffed in her purse during my last visit. Spa treatments, shopping sprees, lavish dinners out. All of it funded by me. I'd unknowingly transformed her from a struggling dental receptionist into someone who could have stepped out of the pages of a glossy magazine. All while I ate bargain brand cereal and snipping coupons just to stretch my fixed income a little further. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was the betrayal, the breach of trust. I had opened my heart, my wallet, my very soul, and she had used it all to build a life that no longer had room for me in it. That night, I sat alone in my living room, staring at the unopened gift I had wrapped for Cedric's birthday, a box that should have been torn open by excited little hands. And that's when it hit me. Something had changed. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. 8 years. For 8 years, I had been played like an instrument. Every tear, every carefully worded plea, Every sob-filled phone call, masterfully orchestrated to manipulate a lonely old woman, desperate to feel useful. I turned to my laptop and pulled up my bank account. The numbers glared at me, cold and merciless. Over the past 8 years, I had given Damon and Joy more than $80,000. $80,000. All of it scraped together from my husband's life insurance, from my retirement savings, from decades of frugal living and sacrifice. And now I wasn't even allowed to see my grandson. My hand trembled as I picked up the phone and dialed the number I had saved that morning. Rebecca, it's Bernice Caldwell again. I need you to pull up the full record of transfers from my account to Joy Caldwell's personal account over the last year. As she began to read the numbers aloud, I felt something stir in me, something sharp, cold, and long dormant, something like resolve, being politely ignored to finally reclaiming my power, and every second of it felt earned. Yesterday, I stood on the edge of righteous anger. And today, everyone at that party would finally find out who exactly they had been celebrating. No more illusions, no more charades. The masks were coming off. That morning, I woke up with a rare kind of clarity, sharp, unwavering, and decades overdue. I was done playing the role of the helpless, heartbroken widow. I was done accepting crumbs of affection from people who only saw me as a walking wallet, useful when needed, invisible when not. That night, while the rest of the world slept, I had sat under the kitchen light, pouring through every single bank statement, every receipt, every transaction I had kept, even the ones I hadn't thought mattered until now. And they all told the same story. The truth was damning. Rebecca from First National Bank had gone above and beyond, more than her role probably allowed. But she and I had known each other for over 15 years. She'd been there when my husband passed, had helped me settle his accounts, guided me with steady patience through the endless maze of insurance and legalities after his death. She'd never failed me, and she didn't now. "I've never seen anything quite like this," she said over the phone, her voice low but steady. "The pattern is clear. Every single deposit you made for Cedric's expenses was instantly rerouted to her personal account. Not 1 cent went to daycare, school, or anything remotely child-related. The numbers weren't just surprising, they were staggering. In just the past year, I had sent over $32,000 for what I was told were urgent, unavoidable expenses for my grandson. Daycare fees, medical bills, school supplies, all allegedly necessary, all fabricated. The so-called medical bills, already paid by insurance. The daycare, never saw a dime. And the school supplies, somehow costing more than an average family's rent. But Rebecca had dug even deeper. "Mrs. Caldwell," she said, hesitating just a beat, "I ran a credit check on your daughter-in-law. I think you need to know she's been using your financial background to qualify for significant loans, luxury cars, credit cards, even what looks like cosmetic surgery financing." I remember the chill that crawled up my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. "She listed you as her primary financial reference and support. The lenders approved her based on your credit history, your assets. In essence, she's been living on your name and reputation." The call ended and I just sat there, phone still in hand, my stomach in knots. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just theft. This was identity fraud, committed by the woman I had trusted with my grandson, by the person I had tried so hard to support. She wasn't just spending my money. She was being me to get what she wanted. Now, as I sat in my kitchen, my coffee cooling beside me, I picked up my phone again, this time dialing a number I had been avoiding for too long. My son answered on the second ring. "Damon Caldwell speaking." "Damon, it's Mom." A pause, then cautiously, "Hey, Mom, how are you?" "I'm calling about the party yesterday." Another pause, longer this time. "Look, Mom, I'm sorry about the confusion with the guest list. Joy was just trying to keep things manageable. 300 people is a lot." Confusion, that's what he was calling it. "Damon, I wasn't confused. I was excluded, deliberately, from my grandson's birthday party." "Mom, come on, don't be dramatic. It wasn't personal." "Then explain how coworkers from 3 states away made the guest list, but your own mother didn't." Silence, heavy and telling. I could hear his thoughts spinning, searching for a story that wouldn't make Joy look like the villain. Joy just thought it might be better to have a separate setting with you, something more intimate. When? What? When is this small, intimate celebration supposed to happen? More silence. Of course, there was no plan. There never had been. We'll figure something out, he mumbled eventually. Maybe next weekend. Damon, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. How much money do you think I've given you and Joy in the past year? A weary sigh. Mom, where's this coming from? Just answer. I don't know, a few thousand? You helped out with some of Cedric's stuff, and we're grateful for that. A few thousand. I glanced down at the papers scattered across my kitchen table. I did it because it was the only way to protect myself. And in the long run, maybe even to protect you too. He stared at me, arms crossed, jaw tight. He was trying to stay calm, to piece things together before reacting. Protect us from what, Mom? From being embarrassed in front of our friends? From a little help paying for things? I sat down slowly on the edge of the couch, the weight of the last 24 hours still pressing on my shoulders. From a lie that's been growing bigger every year. From being used. Damon, I didn't mind helping when it was really about Cedric. But it hasn't been about him for a long time. His face darkened. You think I don't care about my own son? I think you've been too blind to see how Joy's been using both of us. I think you wanted so badly for things to look perfect on the outside that you didn't want to question what was happening on the inside. He didn't respond. His silence was louder than any defense he could have made. I've been giving and giving, trying to be included, to feel like part of this family. And in return, I've been lied to, manipulated, cut off from my grandson. Do you know what that feels like? To be erased? He sat down across from me, rubbing his hands over his face. I didn't know. That's exactly the problem, Damon. You didn't know, and worse, you didn't want to know. You let Joy control everything. She didn't just take my money, she took my place in Cedric's life. On purpose, he looked up sharply. She told you that? She admitted it. She said she's been cutting me out for months, canceling visits, making sure I don't see him. And it worked. I can't even remember the last real moment I shared with Cedric. Can you? He looked stunned. Hurt flickered behind his eyes. You think this is about money? It's about dignity, about respect. I won't bankroll a lie anymore. I won't keep pretending we're a happy family when I'm being treated like a stranger. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. So what now? That's up to you, I said quietly. But understand this, I'm not going back to being your emergency ATM. I'm not going to let Joy shame me into silence. And I'm certainly not going to let her keep my grandson from me. She's scared, Damon said. She feels like everything's falling apart. Good, I said, standing. Maybe now she'll understand how I've felt for years. He didn't stop me as I walked toward the door, but just before I opened it, he spoke again. I don't know what to do. I turned to him, my hand on the doorknob. Start by being honest with yourself. Then we'll see if you're ready to be honest with me. And with that, I stepped outside, the evening air cool against my skin. For the first time in a long time, I felt no guilt, no fear, only clarity. The damage was done. But maybe now healing could begin. I was being robbed in plain sight by your wife. That wasn't some wild accusation. It was the plain, painful truth. I didn't come empty-handed either. I had evidence. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I'd spent the better part of 2 sleepless nights assembling. Bank statements, credit reports, receipts I'd discovered tucked inside Joy's purse. Line after line proved it beyond a doubt. Every dollar I'd given you for Cedric had ended up in her personal account. Not a dime had been spent on actual childcare, supplies, or anything remotely related to your son. Damon took the folder reluctantly, his jaw clenched as he flipped through each damning page. Even if this is true, Mom, he said slowly, tension building in his voice, you can't just freeze our accounts without telling us. We have bills, responsibilities. I raised an eyebrow, keeping my tone level. Responsibilities? You think you have responsibilities? What about mine? I have a responsibility to protect myself from fraud. He frowned. You're being dramatic. Oh, am I? My voice sharpened. Your wife just told me I'd never see my grandson again, that she's been manipulating his schedule for months just to keep me out of his life. Is that what a grateful daughter-in-law does? For the first time, Damon didn't have an answer. His expression faltered, confusion creeping in. She wouldn't do that, he mumbled, though he didn't sound so sure. Would she? When's the last time I babysat Cedric? I challenged him. When did he last visit my house? When's the last time we had any kind of relationship that didn't involve me wiring money to you two? He didn't respond, just stared down at the mess of papers in his lap. Pages that held more truth than he wanted to face. The party meant a lot to her, he said quietly, still trying to justify it all. She planned it for months with my money, money she claimed was for Cedric's needs. She's a good mother. No, I corrected him, my voice steady but cold. She's a good actress. There's a difference. Footsteps echoed from the staircase. We both turned as Joy appeared in the doorway, her earlier frenzy scrubbed away. Gone was the panicked, screaming woman who had lashed out at me. In her place was someone carefully polished. She wore a conservative outfit, understated makeup, and an expression that tried to look warm, maternal, trustworthy. Hello, Bernice, she said, her voice soft and controlled. I'm really glad you came. I think we need to clear the air. I think we need to clear the accounts, I replied, starting with you paying back every cent you stole. I didn't steal anything, she said, cool as ever. You gave us that money freely. I gave it under false pretenses, I snapped. That's called fraud. She sat down beside Damon and placed a hand on his arm like she owned it. Bernice, I know you're upset, but accusing me of fraud? That's too much. Too much? I pulled out a specific printout. Then explain this. $32,000 in so-called childcare expenses used for spa treatments and shopping binges. What's the excuse for that? I did use some of it for myself, she admitted, barely blinking. But only because I needed to maintain a certain appearance for Damon's career. In his field, image matters. I laughed then, a bitter, hollow sound. Image? You mean the illusion that you can afford luxury cars and designer handbags on a mid-level manager's salary? You weren't helping this family look successful. You were helping yourself get a taste of a lifestyle you couldn't afford. And you used my money to do it. Damon looked from her to me, his eyes beginning to reflect a sliver of doubt. Joy, is what she's saying true about the money? It's more complicated than she's making it sound, she replied quickly, her tone clipped but calm. It's not complicated, I said, staring directly at her. You lied to him, you lied to me, and you stole from both of us. The only thing left to decide now is, what are you going to do about it, Damon? The room fell into a heavy silence. I watched the realization dawn on his face, slow and painful. The perfect woman he'd married had been living large, off the retirement savings I'd worked a lifetime for. How much? He finally asked, his voice low and tight. 87,000, I said. Over 8 years. And that includes money she borrowed using my name, without my permission, against my credit and assets. Joy shot to her feet, eyes flashing. You can't prove any of that. I can prove it, I replied calmly. Every single transaction is on record. The bank has copies of loan applications with your name and mine, where you listed me as your primary source of financial backing. For the first time since I'd known her, Joy looked rattled. The confident mask cracked ever so slightly, and beneath it was something raw, cornered, afraid. Cedric needs stability, she said, her voice rising with desperation. He needs a mother who's not constantly stressed about money, a family that looks successful. I did this for him. You did this for yourself, I said, rising to my feet, and it ends now, Hen. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, her voice shot through the silence, shrill, venomous. You'll never see him again. I'll make sure of it. I didn't flinch. I didn't even look back. We'll see about that, I said, because I had one more call to make. And this time it wasn't to the bank. It was to my lawyer. Patricia Hriss had been handling family legal matters for over 30 years. She'd helped me through my husband's passing, guided me through the maze of legal paperwork that came with widowhood. Now she was going to help me take my life back, from the woman who'd slowly been dismantling it piece by piece. This is extensive, Patricia murmured as she reviewed the documents I'd brought into her office. We're looking at financial fraud, identity theft, potentially even elder abuse charges. Your daughter-in-law's been busy. Can we get the money back, I asked. We can certainly try, she said. But more importantly, we can make sure she faces consequences. This isn't just about money anymore, Bernice. It's about protecting your rights as a grandmother and making sure she can't exploit you any further. I'd been turning Joy's words over in my mind all night, the way she admitted, without shame, that she'd been keeping Cedric from me for months, the way she'd threatened to cut me off entirely. Her cruelty was calculated and chilling. She said she'd make sure I never see Cedric again, I told Patricia. She's been manipulating visitation for months. She can't do that without legal justification, Patricia said firmly. Grandparents do have rights, especially when there's evidence of misconduct by the parent, and financial fraud certainly qualifies. She paused, giving me a long, thoughtful look. But I have to ask, Bernice, are you ready for how this might affect your relationship with your son? This won't just touch Joy. It's going to touch Damon too. I'd been asking myself that same question again and again. Damon had chosen her, had defended her, even in the face of undeniable truth. He had brushed aside my warnings, belittled my pain, treated me like I was the difficult one. My relationship with Damon is already broken, I said quietly. Maybe it's time he realized that enabling someone like Joy has consequences. Patricia nodded once. Then we start with a formal demand letter. We'll ask for full restitution, every penny of the fraudulent charges, plus interest and legal costs. If she refuses, we go to court and file criminal charges. How long will it take? That depends, she said, a faint smile curving her lips. If she's smart, she'll settle quickly and quietly. If not, she leaned back, her tone hardening. Well, fraud cases involving the exploitation of grandparents tend to attract a lot of attention. Media love them, and I imagine Joy won't enjoy the spotlight. I left Patricia's office that day with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. For the first time in years, I wasn't standing alone. I had someone in my corner who understood exactly what had been done to me and was ready to fight back. It wasn't merely unfortunate, it was unforgivable. It crossed a line so deeply that forgiveness wasn't just unlikely, it was irrelevant. The letter went out to Damon and Joy's house first thing the next morning. By midday, my phone was vibrating on the kitchen table. I picked it up to hear my son's voice, taut with frustration and fatigue. "Mom, what the hell is this?" His words came clipped, breathless, like he'd been holding them in too long. "It's a demand for restitution," I answered, calm but firm. "Your wife stole from me. I want my money back." "She didn't steal anything," he said, already defensive. "You gave her that money voluntarily." "I gave it under false pretenses, based on lies. That's fraud, Damon. And if you can't see that, then you're part of the problem. You're going to tear this family apart over money?" "I'm not tearing anything apart. I'm finally protecting myself from people who treat me like a bottomless ATM. That's not fair. Joy loves you." "No, Joy loves my bank account. That's very different." I heard voices on the other end, muffled, indistinct, and then another voice slid into the call. "Joy." "Bernice, this is getting out of hand," she said with the kind of practiced concern that always sounded just short of genuine. "We need to sit down and talk this through, like family. We already tried that, yesterday, remember? You threatened to keep me away from my grandson, permanently. That's not how family treats one another." "I was upset," she replied quickly. "I didn't mean what I said." "Oh, you meant it," I said. "Just like you meant it when you slowly and deliberately erased me from Cedric's life while continuing to accept my money. Every playdate canceled, every visit pushed off. I haven't had a single moment alone with my grandson in 6 months." There was a pause, and then she replied, her voice carefully modulated. "Bernice, I think maybe you're remembering things a little differently." "Am I? Then put Cedric on the phone. Let me talk to him. Right now. He's at school. It's Saturday." Another pause. Too long. "He's at a friend's house." "What friend?" "You don't know, Wahid." I'd like to know all of Cedric's friends. I'd like to be part of his life, like grandmothers are supposed to be. You are part of his life. When, Arpin, Mommy, only one, said pressed. When I'm writing checks? When I'm bailing you out of another financial mess? When exactly do I get to be a grandmother instead of a line of credit? You're being unreasonable. No, I'm being honest. You have 72 hours to respond to the letter from my lawyer. After that, we file criminal charges. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I ended the call and sat in my quiet home, strangely at peace. Something had shifted. The choice had been made, and there was no turning back. Later that day, the phone rang again. This time it was someone I hadn't expected. Damon's older sister, Michelle. She lived out in Portland and rarely got tangled in family drama, but apparently this had reached far enough to draw her in. Bernice, what's going on? She asked, alarmed. Damon called me in a total panic. He mentioned lawyers, lawsuits, something about money. I took a deep breath and calmly walked her through the entire mess. I explained the manipulation, the pattern of lies, the slow surgical exclusion from my grandson's life. I told her what I hadn't told anyone else, because no one had thought to ask. I had no idea it was this bad, Michelle said quietly when I finished. I mean, I always knew Joy was a bit high maintenance, but this? Did you know she was keeping Cedric from me? I noticed you hadn't mentioned him in our calls. I just assumed you were busy. I thought you were pulling away. I thought I was being phased out, because I wasn't useful anymore. But the truth is I was still useful, just not welcome. What do you need from me? She asked. The question caught me off guard. I don't know, I guess. I just need someone to see that I'm not the villain here. You're not, Michelle said without hesitation. You're the one being used, and it's time someone stood up for you. Damon thinks I'm the one tearing the family apart. Damon thinks whatever Joy tells him to think. He always has. I don't want to lose my son. You already have, Bernice. The question now is, will you get your grandson back? That evening, as I stirred a pot on the stove, I saw headlights sweep across my driveway. Through the window, I recognized the car. Damon's. He was alone. Before he could knock, I opened the door. We need to talk, he said. Come in. He stepped inside and glanced around the modest living room. I saw it hit him, the quiet simplicity, the evidence of a life built without pretense. It wasn't the kind of house his wife would ever find acceptable. I found the receipts, he said, voice low. What receipts? The ones Joy tried to hide. Spa visits, designer shopping, all sorts of stuff. I found them shoved under the passenger seat of her car. I sank slowly into a chair. How much? Thousands, tens of thousands, all charged to credit cards I didn't even know she had. Credit lines backed by my assets. She told you she was building your credit, didn't she? He nodded, face heavy with shame. She said it was just temporary. There's nothing temporary about Joy, I said. She's been planning this for years. I confronted her, he said, about the money, about keeping you away from Cedric. And? She didn't deny it. What did she say? She said you were controlling, that you were interfering. She said she was trying to protect our family. And you believed her. I wanted to believe her. It was easier than admitting the truth that she's been lying to me since the beginning. Damon sank onto the couch, elbows on knees, head in his hands. I've been such a fool. Yes, I said gently. But you're not the only one. She fooled me too. What do I do now? You decide what kind of man you want to be. One who looks the other way, or one who stands up for the people he claims to love. She's not some poor soul under pressure. She's a predator, Damon. She saw an opportunity and took it. She's my wife. She exploited a widow's love for her grandson. She built an entire lifestyle on your money and mine, and she did it without an ounce of guilt. What happens next? Now you choose. Either keep pretending this is okay or help me make sure it never happens again. If I help you, she'll leave me. She'll take Cedric. If you don't help me, you'll lose us both. The only difference is, if you do the right thing, you might earn some respect back. From me. Maybe even from your son. One day. He didn't say anything. The silence stretched long. Outside, the sun was sinking. painting long shadows across the grass. I need time to think. You have 72 hours, I reminded him. After that, the lawyers take it from here. He stood, walked toward the door, then turned back. Mom, I'm sorry, I should have seen it. I should have protected you. Yes, I said, you should have, but you didn't. The only question now is what you're going to do about it. After he left, I sat there alone, surrounded by the quiet presence of a life I had shaped with care, resilience, and pride. Whatever came next, whether I regained my family or lost them forever, I knew one thing for certain. I would never again be anyone's victim. 3 months later, I sat beneath the warm afternoon sun in my garden, watching my grandson laugh as he chased a small remote-controlled car across the lawn. The controlled helicopter I had bought for him zipped through the air, tracing loops and dips like a bird set free. The very same one I had brought to his birthday party. The one I hadn't been allowed to attend. Grandma Bernice, look how high it goes, Cedric shouted, his voice filled with wonder and excitement, his eyes shining like polished marbles. Careful not to fly it too close to the trees, I called back, my heart full at the sight of his joy, my lips lifting into a smile I hadn't worn this naturally in a long time. It had taken a long and painful road to get here. After that pivotal conversation with Damon, things spiraled further downward before they began to climb back up. Joy had fought the restitution with everything she had. Weaponizing emotion, tears that blurred truth, threats laced with venom, manipulation sharpened by desperation, and finally frantic legal tactics that only further implicated her. She tried to portray me as a bitter, spiteful old woman who couldn't bear to see her son move on without her. She insisted I had fabricated the entire story of financial abuse, claimed I was confused, unstable, jealous of her connection with Damon. But Patricia had been right all along. Hard evidence doesn't bend to lies. The bank statements, the forged credit applications, they didn't leave room for speculation. And when criminal charges loomed on the horizon, Joy caved. The settlement was extensive, full repayment of the $87,000, plus interest and legal expenses. More than that, all financial entanglements between us were dissolved, and most crucially, there was now a legally binding agreement that secured my right to see Cedric. Yet the most significant victory wasn't about money. It was watching Damon finally take off the blindfold. To see his wife, not as the charming facade she wore, but as the person she truly was. The divorce had been finalized just last month. Joy fought tooth and nail for custody, but her documented financial crimes made it a battle she couldn't win. She ended up with supervised visitation and a court order to pay child support. An ironic twist, given she'd never contributed a cent to anyone's well-being before. Damon had shared during one of our weekly dinners that she'd moved back in with her mother in Ohio. She was working at a call center now, living in a cramped studio apartment. The illusion she had built with my money had shattered into pieces. Reality had finally arrived, and it wasn't gilded in fantasy. For a fleeting moment, I felt something like pity, but it passed quickly. She'd made her choices. Now she had to live in the world those choices created. How's Cedric handling everything? I'd asked Damon one evening. Better than I thought, he answered. He misses her, but he's calmer now, happier. It's like he can breathe again. I knew exactly what he meant. Children pick up on tension, even when adults pretend everything is fine. Cedric had spent years growing up in a house built on deceit, furnished with stolen money and held together by emotional coercion. Now he lived in a modest home without the frills, but surrounded by honesty and love. Grandma, can we make cookies now? Cedric asked, bounding toward me as I sat on the porch swing. Of course, sweetie. What kind should we make? Chocolate chip with extra chips. I laughed, remembering how Joy used to chastise me for what she called unhealthy habits. She accused me of sabotaging their parenting just by being indulgent. Well, now I could finally spoil my grandson the way grandmothers were meant to, without guilt, without sneaking it in, openly, joyfully. In the kitchen, flour dusted the counter, and the sweet smell of vanilla filled the air as Cedric chatted endlessly about his friends, his new teacher, his plans for summer break. He was different now. The guarded tone that had crept into his voice over the past year was gone. His eyes were open, clear. He trusted again. Grandma, can I ask you something? Of course, honey. Why did mommy go away? I stopped, the mixing spoon still in my hand, and weighed my response with care. Damon and I had agreed we'd keep explanations age appropriate. Cedric didn't need to carry the full weight of what his mother had done. Sometimes, sweetheart, grown-ups make mistakes, and mommy made some that hurt people. Now she has to make up for them. Did she hurt you? Yes, she did, I said softly, meeting his eyes. But that's not your fault. And it doesn't change how much I love you. I'm glad you're here more now. Me too, baby. Me too. That evening, after Damon came by to pick Cedric up, I sat alone on the porch swing, glass of wine in hand, watching the sky melt into soft shades of pink and gold. My phone buzzed. A message from Michelle. Saw the pictures of you and Cedric baking. You both look so happy. I'm proud of you for fighting for him. I smiled as I typed back, best decision I ever made. And it was true. Standing up to Joy had been terrifying. But in doing so, I reclaimed something I hadn't realized I'd lost. My life. No longer was it someone defined by the money I gave, the problems I fixed. I was seen now for who I really was, a grandmother who loved fiercely, a mother who deserved respect, a woman who would not be used again. The settlement had helped restore my retirement savings, but the real gift was deeper. I had discovered my worth, not as a bank, not as a backup plan, but as a person, a woman with needs of her own, with boundaries worth honoring, with dignity that demanded recognition. Damon and I were rebuilding, slowly. Our relationship was cautious, sometimes painful, but honest in a way it hadn't been in years. He had started confronting his own role, his silence, the way he turned away from the signs. I keep thinking about all the red flags I ignored, he told me one night. How she always had an answer. How she made me feel guilty for doubting her. I should have known. She was skilled, I replied. She told the lies we wanted to believe. But in the end, you saw the truth. You stood up. I just got tired of being seen as a wallet, he admitted. Tired of being guilted into silence. It took a long time, I nodded. But you got there. 3 months later, I was planning Cedric's real 8th birthday party. No more lavish nonsense with 300 strangers and rented llamas. This time it would be genuine. A backyard barbecue, friends from school, homemade banners, and best of all, I was actually invited. I want to help plan it, Damon said when I told him. I want to do it right this time. What do you mean? I mean, I want this party to be about him, not about image or impressing anyone. I want it to be about Cedric, with people who actually love him. I smiled then. That sounds perfect. As I drained the last of my wine and stood to go inside, I thought about who I'd been a year ago. A woman starved for affection, grateful for the scraps a family tossed her way, too manipulated to recognize the power she still held. That woman no longer existed. In her place stood someone new, someone who understood her own value and refused to let it be diminished. The phone rang just as I reached for the door. The number was unfamiliar. Hello, is this Bernice Caldwell? The voice was young, nervous, female. Yes, who's calling? My name is Sarah Martinez. I got your number from a mutual friend. I think my daughter-in-law is... I settled back into my chair, my heart aching for this woman I had never met. Somewhere, maybe not so different from where I was now, she was likely sitting at her own kitchen table, surrounded by piles of bank statements, receipts, and worry, trying to make sense of it all, wondering if she was losing her grip on reality. Tell me what's going on, I said softly. And so she did. For the next hour, I listened to Sarah pour out her story. It started slowly, the way these things often do, small requests for money that didn't seem alarming at first. But over time, the excuses grew more elaborate, the emotional manipulation more calculated. Bit by bit, she was pushed to the margins of her own family, cut off from her grandchildren, isolated and controlled. It was heartbreakingly familiar. I don't know what to do anymore, she said at last, her voice cracking with emotion. I love my son, but I can't go on like this. You don't have to, I told her, my voice steady. You have choices, you have rights, and you have more strength than you think. But how do I even begin? she asked, sounding like someone reaching for a lifeline in the dark. You begin by writing everything down, I said. Every time he asks for money, every time he gives an excuse, every conversation, every transfer, every document it all. And then you call a lawyer. I'm scared, she whispered. I was scared too, I admitted. But you know what terrified me more? Spending the rest of my life as someone's victim. We kept talking for another half hour, and slowly I could hear the shift in her voice. Where there had been helplessness, there was now resolve. Where there had been fear, the beginnings of strength. By the time we ended the call, Sarah sounded different, stronger, more focused. I gave her Patricia's number and made her promise to call first thing Monday morning. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a while. Something inside me had changed. I realized I wasn't just someone who had survived being exploited by someone I loved. I was someone who could help others survive it too. 6 months later, I found myself sitting in Patricia's office again, but this time I wasn't alone. Beside me were 3 other women, each with their own story of financial betrayal by family. We had formed a small, informal support group. We met to talk, to share resources, to help each other untangle the emotional and legal mess that came with being manipulated by the very people we'd once trusted most. The hardest part, said Margaret, her voice quiet but steady, is accepting that the people you love can look at you and see nothing but a bank account. Her son-in-law had been stealing from her for 5 years before she discovered the truth. The most empowering part, added Ruth, whose daughter had forged her name on checks, is realizing that you don't have to let it continue. You can say no. You can walk away. I nodded, deeply moved by their honesty and courage. My mind drifted to that day outside Cedric's birthday party, the day I stood there humiliated and heartbroken, treated like a stranger by my own family. That moment had broken something in me, but it also forced me to rebuild. What saved me was the moment I understood, really understood, that I deserved better. Not because I was perfect, but because I was a person, a human being with worth. And now I had my grandson back. I had my self-respect back. And I had something else, something unshakable. The knowledge that I would never again let myself be someone's victim. That afternoon, I picked Cedric up from school. We went straight to the park, just the 2 of us. As he raced toward the swings, laughing with his friends, I sat on the bench and watched him with a calm that settled deep in my bones. This was what I had fought for. Not just for the right to see him, but for the right to be part of his life without anyone else controlling the terms. "Grandma, push me higher," he called out. "Hold on tight," I called back, and I gave him a gentle push. He soared into the air, his laughter carried by the wind. His joy was fearless, pure, and in that moment, I smiled. We were both finally free. Now, I wonder about you, the one listening to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you lived through something like this? If you feel like sharing, I'd love to hear from you. And while you think about it, I'll leave you with 2 more stories. Favorites on this channel. They might surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until the end.